All right. So as Patrick said, my name is Zachary Aubin. I am originally from Michigan. I've been living in Finland for 2 years. About 5 years ago, I worked at a blacksmith shop for roughly 11 months, a little bit under a year. And my main job there was bluing. And what we would do is polish up the metal and then basically deep fry it in salt for like half an hour. And I've been talking with Patrick about this bluing process, and I was thinking, like, this isn't very feasible for the average smith, like the average garage blacksmith. So I did a little bit of research, and I found rust bluing, which is the older, more traditional way that gunsmiths used to blue firearms. So what is bluing? As it was first described to me, bluing is a positive rusting of the metal. And what happens is the bluing is called, or it's basically called black oxide. So the chemical formula for that would be Fe3O4, and then regular rust would be Fe2O3. And it gets its name from the blue-black color that appears, obviously. And it provides protection from actual rusting when used in conjunction with oil. This is a very important thing. If you just have a blued piece of steel, it will just rust normally like anything else. However, if you use oil of any kind, like it can be vegetable oil, it can be whatever, it will do very well at preventing it from rusting. So what can it be used for? Obviously firearms, which is the main thing that everybody knows it for. I know a lot of machinists like using it for their parts, just for that little bit of rust protection, and also making it look a little bit nicer. Cast iron cookware is sometimes blued as well. And then same thing with like clock parts, very fine metalwork. Now, what's needed? You're going to want three things: degreaser, or you can use like a hot soap bath if you don't have anything, or you can use whatever degreaser that you like. The main thing that you want, because nobody wants to wait around for 4 or 5 days for their piece to rust, is hydrogen peroxide and salt. What this will do is when you put it onto the metal, it will begin rusting almost immediately. And this is what you want, because you don't want to wait 4 days to get the results that you need. And then you need water. So the beginning is you're going to decrease the pieces that you'd like to blue. You're going to heat the piece lightly and apply the hydrogen peroxide and salt mixture. When you heat your metal, the hydrogen peroxide kind of takes into it a little bit better, and it just gets it going a little bit quicker. And then you sit and wait for however long that you like. When I did my tests, we were doing it for roughly half an hour, 45 minutes. You can do it 15 minutes. You can do it in 20 minutes. You can do it in an hour. You can leave it overnight. I actually ended up getting sick a couple weeks ago while I was running these tests, and I had a piece that had been sitting for about a week, and it still came out quite well, I think. Excuse me if I'm going too fast. Here are some pictures. We did a myriad of different things. So we have the Mjolnir that my friend Iro made, some little rings that I had made, a knife, a forged oak leaf, a piece of, that was just a piece of mild steel that I took and polished. And then we had my teacher's knives, because why not? And you can see on a couple of these, the necklace, these rings, and then the oak leaf, they're already blued just a little bit. After it's rusted, what you're going to want to do is wipe it lightly with a cloth. And then you place it in boiling water for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then you keep repeating this rusting process and boiling process until you have the desired hue of blue that you want. Now, I do need to mention that you do not want to remove the rust, because that's the thing that's changing from, excuse me, I'm going to go back up. because rust is Fe2O3. Boiling it in water will change it to Fe3O4, which will make it that black oxide. So here we have this piece over here that was just that mild steel. That had been blued, I think, once or twice before that, and you could see that it's very patchy right here. And then over here, you can see that it's a lot more darker, a lot nicer, a little bit patchy still. I found it very difficult to get the rusting kind of even. But if you keep doing the process enough, it will eventually just become one solid dark color throughout the whole thing. And you can still see over here on this ring up here that it is also a little bit patchy. Excuse me. And then here are the rings after, I think that was after about six boils for it. And then here's the oak leaf, and then the knife I had over here. I'm going to apologize because some of these pictures, some of them are taken in different steps throughout the process, but I do hope that you all understand that you just need to keep bluing it. Some side notes that I found. This works better on polished or matted pieces. You can take a sandblaster and mat something and blue that. That's a very common thing to do within the firearms industry for certain guns. It gives it a nice finish. And from my own tests, the matted pieces actually rusted a little bit more evenly. I found that it was a little bit useless for unpolished forged works. For instance, this oak leaf up here. All it was I forged it, and then I took it to the wire wheel, and then I just rusted it and then threw it into the pot to boil. And from my opinion, it doesn't really look that good. I think you can get a better finish from tar or beeswax or really anything else than bluing, just for forged works. It is rust resistant, but it's not rust proof. The more you keep it oiled, the better it will be. The less rusting that'll happen. You can keep it oiled for years and it will look as beautiful as the first day that you finished it. Vinegar can be added to the hydrogen peroxide and salt mixture. However, it does not really bite into the material as much. And I actually found out after I tried this that hydrogen peroxide and vinegar is something that some people use to actually take rust off. When I tried it, it would rust almost immediately, but I feel like the vinegar was like taking off the rust as it was doing it. So you'd wipe it down with that cloth and all of it would just be gone and it would look normal. It's just like a little bit of rust here and there. Something to note is that you don't want to what am I thinking? You don't want it to bite in too hard into the metal, but you want it to actually kind of stick to it. I'm not sure if that makes sense or if I'm explaining myself well. So if it rusts too much, it'll kind of get this pitting into it, which is why it's kind of bad, I think, to have it leave and sit for a week or longer than that. But yeah, it's completely safe to do inside on the stovetop. There are no chemicals at all for it. The main thing is just the hydrogen peroxide, but that's not going to be an issue when you're boiling it. And this is also safe to be used with soldered pieces. You can only really do this with iron, steel, cast iron, and stainless steel. I really wouldn't use this with any other materials. Here I have two pieces. The one on the left in the left picture is matted. The one on the right is just a polish. I think I got that up to 320. I made a mistake when I was doing this. So the right one in the right picture is the matted one. After every boil, what I would do is take it to a wire, not a wire wheel, but like a cloth wheel, and I would lightly just kind of polish it a little bit. So the matted piece actually got a polished finish on it, but as you can see, it's a little bit more darker. Maybe you can do this with Damascus, and I think it gives you a wonderful look to it. The picture on the left is the blued piece, and then the picture on the right is blued. When you have Damascus, you're going to want to kind of take off some of that blue, so that way the parts will have like different shades, as you can see. Here it is with a knife. I thought it came out really well with the knife. As you can see, there's more of that spotting there, and it really just, in my experience, really just came down to just keep doing it, just keep rusting it, so that everything gets coated and even, and then it gives you that nice black color.
The second question, which we anyway answer first, is could you repeat the salt and hydrogen peroxide ratio, please?
Yes. So you're going to want to use
by Steve Rook.
1 or 2 teaspoons of salt for every deciliter of peroxide. It's not exact, and in my experience, you don't need to be exact. Mariano, if you took like a welding surface, it will all just look like one piece. Yeah, it's your turn.
If you apply to the welding surface, is it going to look different, or it's going to look like one piece? And the answer was yes, it looks like one piece.
Yeah, it'll all just look like one piece. The bluing doesn't really give it like different hues depending on the type of steel that you're using. It all just kind of does like a dark blue black finish.
Then has come the next question from Sverrir. How much do you heat the steel?
Not very, not a lot. Like, you don't want to get it like red hot. You want it to be like, you can still touch it, like slightly warm. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but like, you enough where it's warm, but that you can still touch it and not fry an egg. I hope that helps.
Well, sounds like somewhere around 40 to 50 degrees
About,
Celsius.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Do you want the solution just to steam off? Is it warm enough that when you apply it, it steams off, and then you keep reapplying it?
No, because it doesn't really steam off.
So it's not that warm then?
No. Because when you put it on, it will just immediately begin rusting the steel. So what I did with it, and I probably should have mentioned that earlier, is I took a cloth, I dipped it a bit into the hydrogen peroxide salt solution, and then I just kept rubbing it. And then it would slowly get rusted over time, and then after a while, I'll just let it sit for a bit.
Sverre, your question has been answered by this. There has been the next question. Yes, this is a nodding head, that's great. The next question by Steve Rook. How did the company you worked for do it?
So it was more like a chemical process. We bought these like salt. They are actually called bluing salts. You can buy them from, I think, Brownells in the US. There's like a Brownells catalog. And what we did was we would take the gun, strip off everything off of it, the bluing, the rust, all of it. And after we did that for a bunch of them, we would take them, run a wire through the barrel, dip it in Actually, we didn't dip it. We left it in like this warm soapy solution. It was literally just like dish soap and water for about half an hour. And this would be our degreaser. And then from there, we would put this into the boiling. It actually looked just like like at McDonald's behind at like a fryer. We would put them in there, and this would be a mixture of like water and then the bluing salts. And we did that for about half an hour, and it had to stay this exact temperature. And I cannot remember the temperature off the top of my head. And then from there, we would take them out, and they would get all blued. And then we would put them in this boiling water solution after that, and then for another half hour, and then take them off to dry. And then after they're dried, they're ready to be put back on, like put all back together, and then ready to be given back to the customer. That was really how we did it.
Okay. What color is that? Was it just a dark brown?
No, it was blue. It was a dark blue.
Okay. The method.
There is the like plum brown or browning kind of solution, but we never did that, and I don't know much about that. Sorry.
The process you've described that you use yourself at home, that produces a more of a light brown or dark brown effect, doesn't it? Does it go to black?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The color, the final color you get, is that a very dark brown or black, or is it a dark blue?
It's like a dark blue black.
Oh, okay.
It's not brown.
Okay. Thank you.
And one question: can you polish it? How after you're bluing it? Can you like if you do it with a knife? Can you make it sharp and nice and smooth?
Yeah. So if you're going to, that's a difficult question. Well, maybe not too difficult, but so if you rust it, it's obviously going to kind of mess up the sharpening on it and everything. You can still sharpen it after it's blued, but it will take off the bluing. What I did with my knife and everything, because with all of those pieces, I would just take them to a cloth wheel right after and lightly go over it. You don't want to put any force into it because that will actually take off the bluing. But I don't see why you can't use it for knives, and I'm probably going to make a knife that's blued in the next month or so.
I'm going to try it.
I do want to mention that this is entirely safe to do in your guys' home as long as your wives will allow it. Like you can do this, like get an old pot and do it on your stovetop. It's not bad at all.
So the next question in the chat is from Mariano. So something like when you use beeswax or so, I think this is related to the temperature question.
About what you would use for beeswax, okay. Really, it's something that you can play around with, I think. Because like what I did in my results that I had when I did this at the school will probably be a little bit different from your guys's. At least in the process of doing it, but in the end, it will be the blued color. But yeah, like about what you use for beeswax would be fine.
Next question, again from Mariano. Is this method similar to the one used in the past to get the blue color in armory?
Yes, that is, this is the original way that gunsmiths, like the village gunsmith or whoever, would blue their firearms. They did it a little bit differently because from the reading that I did on it, they would let it sit like a cabinet for a couple days until it got rusted. I think we don't have time for that in this day and age. I mean, if you want to wait 4 days for something to rust, you can. Excuse me. But you know, I think the hydrogen peroxide solution would be fine. Would work a lot better. But there's nothing wrong with, like, any of you can take a piece of rusty metal that you have sitting in your workshop and boil it and it would turn blue. So you don't need the hydrogen peroxide and salt solution, but I think that it's the best way to get the results quick.
The next question comes from Paul Voss. Is this method developed for the gun and rifle industry?
Yeah, as I said, it's what they did before. The gunsmithing industry doesn't really do that now. They kind of did what we did when I was working in the gun shop, and we used the salts, the blooming salts, because that's a little bit cheaper for them and it's a lot quicker.
And the next question again from Paul Voss is, why did they blue the firearms?
Don't quote me on this. The way that I see it is that they did it because it gave it a beautiful, nice finish. It turned this piece of steel into something a little bit more than that for the firearm, made it look a little bit more professional. And it does offer that rust protection without messing up the like the internals of the gun. Because you have a lot of moving parts in there and everything, and when I was bluing those parts, we did all of them, and they'll wear off and everything, and that's fine. Also, with when you're firing something down a barrel, you don't really want anything obstructing that, and when you blue a barrel, you're not going to have anything obstructing that because it is so like thin of a layer.
From Mariano again, if you keep using oil, is it gonna keep, I think, the color forever? He is thinking to use it in some pieces.
Yes. And I say this because I have held a lot of very old firearms that were kept in very good condition, and that is because their owners oiled them. So whatever pieces that you guys do, oil them. Just lightly oil them and they will be perfect. Yes.
Do you have a favorite oil for that purpose?
That's a good question. Yeah, you can, Paul Voss just said olive oil. You can use olive oil for that. That would be perfectly fine. I'm trying to think back to the oil that we used when I was in the gun shop. I can't remember the name of it. But really, honestly, any oil that you guys have around, you can use. Maybe not motor oil. Yeah, it was Ballistol. That was the name of it. It was Ballistol. Thank you, Paul.
Makes sense to use Ballistol in the gun shop.
Yeah. We use that for a lot of things.
Okay. Have you also been using what is linseed oil for that purpose?
I haven't tried it, but I don't see why you can't.
There has been a comment from Steve. I've used a mixture of beeswax and linseed oil for a forged finish.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Sure.
Patrick, I heard you saying use linseed oil. I think you have to be careful with it because linseed oil is drying. That means when you put the oil on the metal, it gives a continuous layer, and you can't get it off. And when you use oil which doesn't dry, you have a small film over the surface, which is always keeping the oxygen away. I think linseed oil is maybe a kind of damage.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I agree. That would definitely damage that. Because as you said, with the not linseed oil, it has that kind of layer over it that prevents oxygen from getting in, and that's really what you want. So thank you for mentioning that, because I didn't know that linseed oil did that. I don't really use linseed oil that often.
No, when I use it, I tend to use boiled linseed oil. That dries much more quickly. But mixed with wax, it depends what you're trying to achieve, I guess.
Yeah.
What kind of oil do you use, Steve?
Boiled linseed oil.
Boiled linseed oil, yes.
Yeah, that dries much more quickly. Raw linseed oil takes an age to dry, and you should wipe it off. If you leave a layer on there, you get a sticky finish, which is not very attractive. But I've used it on different jobs, and it gives a good protection interior wise for the steel, and it's a nice natural finish. But also another wax is microcrystalline wax, which is a very good wax. Excuse me a minute, Elspeth, what's the name of that wax? Renaissance wax. It's used a lot in museums, etc. And that is very good protection. It's quite harmless. Yeah. And it's totally transparent.
To the next question, which is from Mariano. Can you get the light blue color, or is it a way to get the different color and not the deep blue and black?
No, with this process, you will only get the bluish black color.
One possibility, though, now that you ask this, in school we had this, we watched this documentary about this ancient armorer workshop, and they have been using the tempering colors for the light blue. Because in armory, it doesn't really matter if it's like half, depending on the piece, of course, but in like the big breast shields, it doesn't matter if it's getting crooked slightly. So you can also use heat to get the color, which is different in guns, I assume.
A little bit.
Continue with the next one, which is Wilfried Rosen. Is it the heat when firing the weapon in the combination with the oil that gives the protection against the corrosion?
No, not really. The heat when you fire a weapon doesn't really contribute to the protection against the corrosion. It's just the bluing or whatever finish that they have on there. I know a lot of companies are now using like stainless instead of regular blued steel, and the oil.
Thanks. I have a question, because I was trying bluing stainless steel, and there is a chemical reaction with two compounds that you make with, I think was like 4 salts. So you put 2 with water first, and then you use the second, and you get a really great black color in stainless steel. But the problem is not very deep, or it's very easy to get out sometimes. So is that process useful to stainless steel in some way? Because I know very ways to rust the stainless steel with some acid and so on, but I'm not sure if you can get a great color or something with.
I haven't tried that with stainless steel. From what I've read, people do have good results doing it with stainless.
Great.
So nice little experiment, I think.
Yeah.
Wilfried Rosen has commented that heating, I think this is like heating steel to 288 will give hell blue, bright blue, and heating it to 298 gives Celsius, of course, both gives it a dark cornflower blue.
Steve Rook wanted to learn about my problem with linseed oil. That's his question. Hi, Paul. Have you had any problems using linseed oil? Yes, I had, because when the linseed is a dry layer and you damage it, you keep on seeing the damages. And it is, for me, it was hard to repair. When you use oil that doesn't dry, you don't see the damages very fast, because the oil is pulling back the damage, of pulling close to the damages. That's what I experienced.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Please. Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, I now have a question. At my last job, we used a bronze oxide to color metal parts. Once we did a whole staircase, how does using such a chemical compound compare to this way of blackening it in terms of durability? Or
You said this is for like a railing?
we used it for railing, but I used it on a knife as well. It works on copper, bronze, iron, whatever.
Okay. I wouldn't use this for railing.
Yeah, it's
Partially because, well, like you're gonna have to keep that. If the railing's outside, you're gonna have to keep that oiled a lot.
Mm.
That, and also it's probably going to be difficult to find a container to boil that in that's big enough for a railing.
That's true.
I think honestly it all comes down to preference. As far as like if you're going to make a knife and you want to use this, or you want to use you said bronze oxide, I
Yes.
think. Yeah, I honestly think it just comes down to preference.
Mm. Yeah, well, maybe for a kitchen knife,
Yeah.
this would be much more applicable.
Sorry, Patrick. It's a question for on Stefan. He said he used the bluing on a staircase, or am I wrong?
Yes.
And then how did you do the fixing? Do you apply an end layer, or does it stay? Do you just apply the chemical?
If I remember correctly, we used, well, the staircase was an indoor staircase, and we just used wax, I believe. We heated it up and waxed it with beeswax.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I used some for some artworks that I put outside. I used Ovatrol.
Okay, Overtroll.
Yeah, and then they are now like a year outside, and I looked at some of the artworks, and I must say they look better than I was anticipating. So I thought each half year I need to go back and redo them. But now after a year, they're quite all right.
Okay.
With the Ovatrol.
I
And
have
that's
to look into
outside.
that. I have to look into that.
Yeah, Ovatrol.
That's interesting.